The title of my sermon this morning is Don't Lose Your Song, because God is still in control. That was our title last week, and guess what? It's still true for today. This just happens to be part 2. Our passages, we're going to be in Psalm 83, Ezekiel chapter 7 just for a moment, and then Psalm 121 for just a moment as well. Last week's sermon, part 1, Don't Lose Your Song, because God's still in control. We used a lot of scripture, and we were talking about the Red Sea crossing and the miracle that took place. But the point of the sermon was, even though the children of Israel had seen this amazing miracle, all of the miracles going through Egypt and the plagues, and then being ushered out, God taking care of them, God guiding them. They get to the Red Sea, they see the Red Sea split, they see Pharaoh's army destroyed, and then within 3 days, we're already complaining again. The encouragement was to not lose our song of praise when we encounter difficulties, because the God of the miracle is still the God that's in control. We're still His children. That hasn't changed. His character hasn't changed, and so we can praise Him, as the song says, even in the storm, because we know that He will bring us through. The question that should have come up in your minds after last week's sermon, there should have been 2 of them. If God does miracles for His children, and we are also His children, might God also do miracles for me? And the next logical question is, does God still work in miracles? I hope to answer both of those questions today as we go through our passage. So if you'll turn in your Bibles to Psalm chapter 83, and we're going to read just a few verses. This is a song of Asaph. This is the last of the Asaph songs. They are usually prophetic, including this one. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace. And do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They're now proud of themselves. They have taken crafty counsel. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. This is not just a psalm of a cry for help. This isn't just Asaph praying, God, please rescue us from these people. It is a prayer, but it's much more than that. As we go through, you're going to see recent events, recent news coming out of these pages in Psalm 83. In this picture, you see a lot of colors. The light blue is this country of Israel. All of the other surrounding colored countries are Muslim countries who have vowed, and I will quote them, who have vowed to destroy the Jews completely. Not as a nation, but as a people. Complete genocide. They completely surround Israel, and Israel is roughly the size of, well, New Jersey. And you thought your neighbors were bad. Israel has been in constant war with these people since day one of them becoming a nation. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 6 through 8 talks about it. The prophet in his last chapter of his book, closing out his book, says, the sound of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, of the voice of the Lord, who fully repays His enemies. Before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came, she delivered a male child. Who has heard of such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to give birth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she gave birth to her children. Israel was literally, it became a nation in the matter of a day. They just said, hey, we're going to call ourselves Israel. And as soon as that happened, all of the nations directly around Israel went to war with them. They were literally fighting a war day one. Now, they did win it, but what a way to start. Now, remember, Psalm 83, this is a prayer that is being prayed, but it's a prayer of Asaph, and you're going to see some pretty amazing things come out of it. Let's continue to read verse 5. For they have consulted, these people have consulted with one consent. They all agree. They have formed a confederacy against Israel? No, against God. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, Philistia, and the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria has also joined them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah. These are people groups. These 10 nations, they are often called nations, but they're really more people groups. They, at this time, during this prophecy of Asaph, this prayer, had come together and were plotting to wipe out the Jews. Same story, just a different day. All the way back from Abraham, Satan has done his best to wipe Abraham's descendants off the map. Time and time again. Complete genocide. And it's the same here in Psalm 83. But what we see is very interesting. From the time that the psalm was written, going to 70 A.D., when the temple was destroyed, there has never been the possibility of these 10 people groups coming together in history to wipe Israel out. Okay? So all of these people groups have never come together in history until our day and time. So not only did it happen back then, but in the pattern, which we would call prophecy, it's happened again. Now I want to show you a map of these nations and these people groups and where they are at in comparison to the nations. You can see the yellow highlights. That is the current country borders. And Philistia, that is where the Philistines, you remember the David and Goliath, that's where that took place. Philistia is what we call Gaza today. Tyre and Gebal is Lebanon, and where Hezbollah, the terrorist organization, took up residence. Assyria is northern Syria. The Hagarites, Ammon, Moab, these are all the country of Jordan, directly to the east of Israel. Edom and the Ishmaelites, they are Saudi Arabia. And then Amalek is the northern section of the Sinai Peninsula, and that is also Egypt. They still own it to this day. So these are the 10 people groups that surround Israel. Now, if you pay attention to any news whatsoever worldwide, you are constantly hearing about Israel and their wars. But what you're also hearing about is these places: Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, Iran. All of these we hear on a constant basis because these 10 confederates have joined together again to destroy Israel. Let's continue to read in Psalm 83 to see what the prayer is. He's talked about who God is. He's talked about what these people have decided. He's talked about who they are. And now this is his request to God. Psalm 83, verse 9. Deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook of Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became as refuse on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yes, all of their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession. Verse 13, O my God, make them like the whirling dust, like chaff before the wind. And notice what he's going to say here. And I want you to remember it for what I'm about to tell you. As the fire burns the woods, and as the flame sets the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the most high over all the earth. Now remember, their confederacy is to wipe out God's people, but their war is with God. And the goal of their destruction from this prayer is that they would know who the true God is, who the Lord, capital L-O-R-D, who Yahweh is, and that He's the most high over all the earth. Notice this prayer specifically mentions a fire that burns the wood, that sets the mountains on fire. Fill their faces with shame. Let them be confounded and dismayed. Let them be put to shame and perish. Let them know who the Lord is, and that the Lord God is the most high over all. We will see these things take place in the stories I'm about to tell you. The authors of our Bible, and the prophets more specifically, they wrote about events that were taking place in their time, but there was a pattern that would come after, and those patterns are what we call prophecies. The Bible gives us prophecies of battles and wars in Israel, and people have used this as ammunition to claim that the Bible is inaccurate. They've said, well, this hasn't taken place, or this doesn't take place, but the truth is, they just haven't waited long enough for the Bible to be proven true. Simply put, if the Bible prophecies that you are reading haven't happened yet, you don't see them answered, instead of automatically rejecting the prophecy, be patient and watch God come through. That goes for our lives too. When God gives us a promise, I'm preaching to me too. When God gives us a promise, and it hasn't happened yet, doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It doesn't mean God's word isn't true. He's been true and proven true. His promise, okay, will take place if we wait long enough. Well, back in June of 2024, I was actually talking to Daniel about this, and I realized a lot of people don't remember. In our day and time, we often forget events. And so I'm going to tell you some stories of what's taken place in Israel over the last few years, and I want you to see God's miracle, God's hand all over it. Well, in June of 2024, my dad and I were doing a study of the book of Revelation and prophecies relating to end times. And while we were doing this study, we came up to this passage in Psalm 83. And as you took these locations of Tyre and Philistia and Gebal and Amalek and Assyria, all of these places, I saw a pattern. Now, what I put on here is what's called the Fibonacci sequence, or the Golden Arch, and you find it in all kinds of places all around the world in creation. I'm not saying this Fibonacci sequence is prophecy at all. It was just the best diagram that I could find to describe in picture form what I was trying to explain. What we found was that these battles for Israel that are in prophecy start in a close location, a close locale. And as they progress, and as Israel wins and expands its territory, we see it take a turn and keep going out further and further on this clockwise formation. Well, the first one took place in 1948, day one. You couldn't get more localized than literally all of your neighbors attacking you as soon as you say, we're going to be a nation. All of its neighbors. But they won. Then in 1967, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria all amassed troops on Israel's border. Israel, for fear that they were going to be destroyed, decided to preemptively attack. And in a matter of just a few short days, not only did they defeat their enemies with extraordinary precision and power, but they also were able to take back the Temple Mount and Jerusalem. Well, as you could see, the first one was very close. The second one, Jerusalem is on the bottom side, and so is Egypt, and Jordan is on the east side. Syria is on the northeast. So you could see it kind of taking that turn. But what we saw later was these were short battles and wars that took place, and then they've continued to fight. And then when we got to our study in June of 24, we saw something wild taking place because we were literally reading about it in the news. Everything kind of changed when Gaza, Hamas, on October 7th of 2023, attacked Israel. Now, for us, that was only just a year prior. So what's taken place was Gaza was attacking. For the last 20 years, Iran has been producing and refining nuclear power plants for the purpose of building nukes that they can put on missiles to destroy Israel. The Ayatollah Khomeini, this is a quote from May of 2020. "The Zionist regime, or Israel, is a deadly, cancerous growth and a determinant to this region. It will undoubtedly be uprooted and destroyed." Iran's goal has been to wipe Israel off the map. Now, I'm not saying Israel is this godly paradigm or paragon or whatever you want to say, statue that everyone's to follow. They're not. They are a lost people. But they are God's children, and God made promises to them. Now, we can like them or we can dislike them. That doesn't negate what God has promised them. And I want to show you what God is not only promising them, but fulfilling before their very eyes. What I'm about to give you, a lot of it comes from a speech given by Rabbi Uri, and I'm going to do my best with his name, Pilowsky, I hope. And it was around June of last year. Now, on the onset of this, I want to encourage you. Acts chapter 17:11. "Be more noble than anybody else, and I want you to take what I'm giving you and do your own study." I do have websites to back up what I'm talking about, news reports even from our own government, but I want you to see God's hand. Iran, for the last 20 years, has been trying to make nukes. But in the process of that, they were also working with these Confederate people groups. The reason I don't like calling them nations, and I've slipped up a couple times, is because although they take place in Gaza, the terrorist organization Hamas is the problem. And although they take place in Lebanon, Hezbollah is the people group, and they're a terrorist organization, and they're the problem. Although Syria is the nation, ISIS is the people group, the terrorist organization that's the problem. And Iran is exploding right now in the church. And it's also under great turmoil and civil war. Some 20,000 Iranians have been killed by the government. We need to be praying for our fellow believers. But the problem isn't the nation of Iran. The problem is the Ayatollah Khomeini and its leaders. That being said, on October 7th, 2023, Hamas terrorists waged the deadliest attack on the Jewish soil since the Holocaust. They came in quickly by surprise attack. They did not attack armed soldiers, but they went after unarmed civilians. It doesn't take long to search. There are numerous pictures of slaughtered babies, raped women, whole families burned alive. Forgive me for being so graphic, but even what I'm saying does not give justice to the evil that was perpetrated on that day. They took hundreds of innocent civilians who they would later torture. Many of them would die abuse, brutality, and starvation. They killed more than 1,200 Israelis. And again, they did not kill soldiers. They killed unarmed families. This started a war, but its intention was to wipe Israel out as a people. In response, Israel attacked Gaza. And since then, they've nearly wiped them out. But the entire time they were attacking, they were towing the line because they didn't want to ruffle Hezbollah's feathers. Hezbollah is in the north, in Lebanon, where Gaza is on the southwest. And they were trying to keep Iran and Syria at bay as well. All of these nations that are proxies of Iran, who have vast resources, who vowed to destroy Israel, they were trying to keep them at bay. So they were just attacking Gaza slowly, particularly. When I did this, this was a report from Reuters. It says that in a matter of 20 days, the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, they found 84 tunnels that were leading from Rafah, that's in Gaza, to Sinai, Egypt. They destroyed 12 kilometers and 500 kilometer, they destroyed 12 kilometers of pristine tunnels, but they found over 500 kilometers worth. It was literally like spaghetti underneath the ground. Some of these tunnels were so large you could drive semis through them. They were well equipped with electric, kitchens, defenses, food, weapons storage, communications, offices, and meeting rooms. One of them was 265 feet deep in the ground. There were, in a matter of 20 days, some 500 terrorists that were killed by Israel and only 10 Israeli soldiers that were killed. Trench warfare was despicable. Some of you remember hearing the reports of that during the Vietnam War. It was hard fighting. To only lose 10 troops in taking those tunnels is amazing. It's an act of God. There's actually a prophecy about it in Ezekiel chapter 7. Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 23 says, "Make a chain, for the land is filled with crimes of blood, and the city is full of violence." By the way, we're going to come back to this in just a second. This word violence is the Hebrew word. It's on, you can find it in Strong's number 2554. Okay? We'll come back to it in just a second. "Therefore I will bring the worst of the Gentiles, and they will possess their houses. I will cause the pomp and the strong to cease, and their holy places shall be defiled. Destruction comes, they will seek peace, there shall be none." Now there's lots of pictures that we could have used, lots of videos of bloodbaths from October 7th, and the destruction of Gaza afterwards. They continually asked, "Bring our captives back and we'll stop the war." But they refused. They held them. And there was no reprieve, and there was no quarter given to those who were continually holding captives. I want you to read the first verse of this in 23 again. "Make a chain, for the land is filled with crimes of blood." That's what took place on October 7th. It was despicable. It was awful. The war that took place afterwards is terrible. Notice what it says. "And the city is full of violence." Now I wanted you to remember that name, or that word, because the Hebrew word that is in Strong's 2554, the word means violence, to be violent. By implication, to mistreat, to make bare, to shake off, to violate, to do violence, to take away violently, wrong, imagine wrongfully. I don't know if you know how to pronounce the word there that's in captions, but it is pronounced in Hebrew Hamas. God literally in the book of Ezekiel named them by name. I'm positive Hamas did not intend their name to be the Hebrew word for violence, but they have lived it out since they were a terrorist organization day one, and God called them out by name. Let's continue to read. Verse 26 of Ezekiel 7. Disaster will come upon disaster, and rumor will be upon rumor. They will seek a vision from a prophet, but the law will perish from their priest, and counsel of their elders. The king, notice this, the king will mourn, the prince will be clothed with desolation, and the hands of the common people will tremble. I will not do to them according to their way, and according to what they deserve I will judge them. Then they shall know that I am the Lord. The same thing that was said in Psalm 83, the same purpose, is that they know who is high, most high. The Muslims believe that their God, Allah, is God of gods. Yahweh is proving to them that he is not. Yahweh is proving that he is King of kings and Lord of lords, that he is God over all the universe. But notice in verse 27 it says, the king will mourn, the princes will be clothed in desolation, and the hands of the common people will tremble. When I was doing my study, this came out April 10th of 2024. So the war has just been going on for a short time, from October 7th until April, roughly 6 months. This was in the headline of the newspaper, or of the website, excuse me. Hamas leader says that 3 of his sons have been killed in an Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. And he was mourning them. He was upset with Israel for obvious reasons. His name was Ismail Hani, and this was April 10th. By July 31st, he was also killed. But it is exactly what the scripture says would happen to their king. The princes would die. While the king will mourn, the princes will die. It's exactly what happened. God held them according to what they deserved. Psalm 74 also mentions them again. Verse 20, have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of, it says cruelty here, but the Hebrew word is Hamas. This couldn't be more accurate than the spaghetti tunnels that they found under Israel going into Egypt, where they would get their resources from. Hundreds of miles of tunnel where they were living and where they would come out to do their guerrilla warfare and then go back in. God names them by name. Well, we've seen the result of what's taken place with Hamas since then. 41,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed. At least 346 Israeli soldiers have died since it began on October 7th. Israel claims that they have killed around 17,000 of Hamas's 25 to 30,000 fighters, including half of their leadership on their military wings. Finally, just recently, almost just a year ago, February 20th of 2025, the night that Hamas had said they were going to bring back all of the captives, the hostages, they were going to release them with big pomp and circumstance and really make a shame and mockery of those that were held. A woman was riding on a transportation bus, and she looked under her seat and she saw a bomb. So needless to say, everybody scattered and they got out and they started looking, and by the end of that day they had found 5 bombs, and 3 of them had exploded and destroyed the bus. The plan was that the bombs would go off on these 5 buses, these transportation buses, inside Israel's second most populous city, while the hostage exchange was taking place. It was supposed to be a smack in the face to Israel. But by some mistake, and I say that in quotes, when they set the timers for the bombs, all 5 of them, instead of putting them down for 9 a.m. to go off during the service, they accidentally put 9 p.m. And so when the 3 buses that did exploded, they were stopped and no one was using them. 0 people were harmed when it could have been thousands. And it was all 5 of the bombs. 0 people injured. There's only one way I see that happening. It's not by chance. Well, let's continue. If we were right, my dad and I, when we were studying this, if they attacked Hamas, the next destruction that would have to take place, the next battle by the prophecies that we were reading, would have been Lebanon. Now, by the time in June of 24 we were doing this study, these things had not taken place, and then God just kept bringing them right in front of us, and it happened as we were studying. So the next the next attack was there in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Every attack that Israel did with Hamas was very calculated, because the danger of Hezbollah to the north was great. Now the goal was so that Hamas could shoot their rockets to the north and cover most of Israel. Again, Israel's the size of New Jersey. Coming from the other side, their goal was to shoot their rockets and fire their missiles from north in Lebanon all the way to the southern border, so they could literally hit anywhere in Israel at any time. Hezbollah was estimated to possess an arsenal of 120,000 to 200,000 rockets and missiles. Now, to give you an idea, can you imagine having a country that has promised to wipe you off the map, kill you and everyone that you are related to, with 120,000 to 200,000 missiles, and they live closer to you than we do to the Kentucky border? Yeah. At the height of the attacks, Hezbollah launched somewhere between 250 to 340 rockets a day with drones. A day. September 2004, so we're going to back up about 20 years. There was an analyst who was analyzing the war, one of the wars that Israel has had with Hezbollah. They noticed that Hezbollah fighters all carried the same walkie-talkie. And the analyst thought, man, wouldn't it be great if we could put a bomb inside that walkie-talkie? We could get all of the terrorists in one shot. Well, she told her supervisor, and the supervisor says, hey, let's see if we can make it work. So what they decided to do was they created a shell company out of Germany that worked with a shell company out of, I believe it was Taiwan, to make these walkie-talkies. Pretty soon, they made these walkie-talkies. They put C4 in them with a detonator, with a responder. Hezbollah wore these walkie-talkies, unbeknownst to them, having C4 in them, for 10 years. Well, Nasrallah, who was their leader, he suspected that Israel was somehow spying on them, and they were using the walkie-talkies to do it. So they decided to downgrade their technology and go with a lesser technology. So they decided to go and use pagers. Well, Israel found out about it. In a matter of like 3 days, they had the plan, because nobody sells pagers anymore. You can't find them, especially in bulk. They worked it out to mass produce a bunch of these pagers and do the same thing they did with the walkie-talkies. And so they put C4 in, they put a little detonator in there, and Hezbollah, within 3 days, asked for an order of 5,000 pagers. Why did they think to go there? Well, that was the only place selling that many pagers. Nasrallah, watching some of the destruction that was taking place in Gaza, got worried. And so he decided that he didn't want them to use tech at all. When Israel's spies found out about this, they said, listen, if we're going to detonate these pagers, we need to do it now before they put them up. So they put on a message that said, we're going to send a message, pick it up and look at it, hold it. The secret message will come out when you hold both buttons down. The reason they wanted to do that was, get it as close to the terrorist brain as possible. Sorry if this gets graphic, but you have to understand what's taking place. Sure enough, it worked. On Tuesday, this is on Tuesday of September 24, those pagers went off and killed 42, only 42, which is kind of surprising, of the terrorists, but it incapacitated some 3,000. It literally took 3,042 fighters out of the fight. And you know how many Israelis soldiers they lost? 0. What kind of battle do you win when you have 3,024 fighters that are taken out of the fight and you don't lose a person? Well, that was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Nasrallah gets really worried. And so he says, everybody pick up your walkie-talkies. The Israel spies said, you've got to be kidding. So the very next day, they set off all the walkie-talkies. 25 more terrorists died that day. You know how many Israel lost? 0. 0. And they didn't get innocents. They only got the terrorists. What a battle plan. That was Wednesday. On Thursday, Nasrallah is terrified. They've lost troops because of the pagers. They've lost troops because of the walkie-talkies. Now, on Thursday, he says, I don't want anybody to use any tech. I'm going to get all of my generals together, and we're going to bring them together. He didn't learn from Pearl Harbor. He says, we're going to bring them all together, and we're going to discuss how we're going to make a battle plan for this. Well, needless to say, the Israeli spies found out, and they found that they could take 3 missiles and literally wipe out all of Hezbollah's generals in one shot. Take a guess how many Israelis they lost that day. 0. Hezbollah was literally neutralized in a matter of 3 days. Now, the battle did take longer, and they went through a massive cycle of military leadership to the point that the military leaders didn't want to be they didn't want to go higher up in the military. They didn't want to take command roles because they knew that that meant their name was on a list. Well, by the prophecy, Philistia, or the Gaza Hamas, was first. Second was Lebanon and Hezbollah. Third, by the prophecy, would have been Syria and ISIS. In December, remember, that the previous was September, the previous was October. October for Hamas, September for Hezbollah. Now we're into December. Civil war has been going on in Syria for 10 years. But now, because Hezbollah has been destroyed, they have no protection. And so when the civil war breaks out and now they have no protection, Ahmad al-Ashar, who is the president now, decided he was going to take over the government. We had like a $10 million bounty on his head. He was a bad guy. He was in strong support of the destruction of Israel. So Israel, when they realized he's about to take control because they had weakened Hezbollah so bad, they had to act fast. December 8th and 9th of 2024, using 350 jets on 350 missions, over a 2-day period, destroyed all of al-Shar's jets, Air Force jets, all of his Navy boats, every general he had, every nuclear scientist they had, every chemical weapons scientist they had. They even took, and you can see it there on the screen, that little blue down the bottom, they even took a buffer zone from Syria that said, you can't shoot rockets this far, ha ha ha. Take a guess how many Israelis they lost. 0. Well, if the prophecy was right, now that they've taken care of Hamas, now that they've taken care of Hezbollah, now that they attacked ISIS, ISIS is back if you know your news, the next one on the list is Iran. So now this is late December 2024. Remember, October, November, December. October 23rd, or 2023, now to December of 2024. 15 months, Israel has destroyed Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, and now their sights are on Iran, who are building the nukes, who has promised by their own leader to wipe them out. On April 18th of 2024, Israel attacked preemptively Iran and their nuclear facilities. They used 200 planes that had to travel 4 hours from Israel to Iran, an hour worth of mission, and then fly back another 4 hours. So their missions were a total of 9 hours. When they were planning the battle, their expectational loss was 8 planes for every mission. Because they did 200 planes, after the first return, they would have lost 16 planes, The next would have been 32, and so on. In a matter of 10 days, if they had to continue to do battle operations, they would have lost 60 pilots and 60 F-35 jets. In the course of that mission, they lost 0. And they flew across 3 countries to do it. There was not even a single plane that required significant maintenance. If you know anything about your military, you know that is impossible. Can't happen. Even the United States, we keep somewhere around 50% of our planes in the air for missions, and then 50% on the ground so that they can work maintenance and keep fighting. Israel, they played their hand, and they played all of it, and God came back, and they lost 0. These losses are impossible. How can we explain this? Well, Iran retaliated. And boy, did they retaliate. They retaliated twice, actually. They combined with the largest drone, cruise missile, and ballistic missile attack against any country in the history of the world. And they did it twice. The Iran-Israel War, which was in June of 2025, also known the 12-Day War, after Israel had bombed the military and nuclear facilities of Iran, they retaliated. Now, I want you to understand how much this is. Iran sent over 550 ballistic missiles, 1,000 suicide drones. They were not targeting military facilities, they were targeting civilian buildings, civilian homes. There was a hospital that was housing United States people. It was directly hit. Half of the building came down. 0 people were injured. Not dead, not even injured, were sent to the hospital. Missiles were shot out of the sky with their drone. The ones that did hit, some hit buildings, but most hit unpopulated areas. One of the hospitals in Jerusalem, they said that the director of the hospital was looking around at the buildings and said, you know, it would be catastrophic if they hit that building directly. So that day, they decided to remove everybody from that building. The very next day, a ballistic missile came and destroyed that building, leveled it to the ground, but nobody was in there, 0, because that man said, oh, out of all of these buildings, that one looks bad. There's only one way that happens. In fact, in these 2 ballistic missile attacks, there were more injuries in Iran than there were in Israel. Because they would set off the missiles. Some of them would go up in the air and redirect back down to Iran. Some of them would misfire on the ground. Some of them would launch, go straight up, and come right back down and kill the ones that fired it. There were more casualties in Iran than there were in Israel itself. Folks, With that a mass, it's a miracle. It's literally impossible in human terms. Here's the crazy part. When they decided to attack Iran and they heard what Iran was sending over, they told the hospitals and the morgues to prepare. This is their expected losses of civilian lives. It was somewhere around 80 to 100,000 people that they expected to die. That's roughly 1% of their population. Now, if you translate that into expected losses for our United States, the highlighted states that you see there, would all of the population would be eradicated in one night. That's what they expected. Total loss after both of those historic ballistic missile attacks was 40 lost lives. 40. That's impossible. How could Israel do what it has done in less than 2 years with so little losses? 0 planes, 0 soldiers, 360 or so from the Hamas war. How could they do that? There's only one way. Psalm 121, verse 4. Behold, he, capitalized, God, who keeps Israel, shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord, Yahweh, is your keeper. The Lord Yahweh is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord Yahweh shall preserve you from all evil. He shall preserve your soul. The Lord Yahweh shall preserve your going out and your coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Remember, the title of this sermon was, Don't Lose Your Song of Praise When You're in the Difficulty, because God's still in control. God doesn't change. He's still the miracle working God. The God that we serve, the God that we call Father, is the same God of David and Goliath, is the same God of Elijah on the Mount Carmel, is the same God of the Red Sea crossing, is the same God of the walls of Jericho falling down, is the same God that healed Naaman from his leprosy. And we could go on and on and on. It is his character. It is who he is. He does not change. And his character is to rescue and protect his children, of which we have been grafted in. I don't know what you're going through, but I want to encourage you, as I did last week, don't lose your song of praise. The God that does miracles even before our very eyes is the God that we serve. If he can keep all of this together, keep this world spinning, he can keep your life too.